Alright, so this is my first actual full decode on the channel. Today we're going to talk about Drake Maye, who actually just took the New England Patriots to the Super Bowl. And we're going to talk about the ritual that he's participating in. The name Drake means a male duck. Shout out to Rambo, that's where I learned that from. Now, there are multiple Jesuit saints who throw up this specific hand sign you see right here that can represent a duck or a goose. Just like Drake Maye, a male duck. And this saint right here is Saint John of Nepomuc, whose feast date is May 16th, right? So think about the name Drake. It means male duck. Drake Maye. The month of May is where this saint, who is throwing up the hand sign of a drake, a male duck, has a feast date on May 16th. And he was also beatified on May 31st. So 2 canon dates in the month of May for Saint John of Nepomuc, a Jesuit saint who is the patron saint of the Bohemian Grove. And here we have another saint, Saint Anthony of Padua, who is throwing up the same hand sign of that duck. And he was canonized on May 30th. So that's another Drake Maye. The male duck hand symbol and another canon date in May. And then we have Saint Peter Canisius, again throwing up that Drake male duck hand symbol. And he was canonized on May 21st. So another Drake Maye. Now Drake Maye was born on August 30th. Anthony of Padua in the K cipher of Gematria equals 308, like the date 30th of August. Peter Canisius also has that Gematria of 308 in the same K cipher. And the K cipher is very relevant because it stems back to the Elizabethan ciphers of Gematria, and it's very popular among modern Freemasons because it's the only cipher where G has a value of 33. And again, shout out to Rambo, this is where I learned this from. Now, what's relevant about these two particular saints here, Anthony of Padua and Peter Canisius, is that they are both Catholic doctors of the church. Just like Saint Robert Bellarmine, who we're going to get into in a second here, all 3 of these Catholic saints are doctors of the church, which is very relevant. This is very prudent in Jesuit conspiracy all across the world, especially even if you are a targeted individual. Now, the feast date of Saint Robert Bellarmine is September 17th. The National Football League was founded on September 17th. Drake Maye in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs threw 179 passing yards, like the date 17th of September. Bellarmine has Gematria of 179, just like his feast date, which is 17th of September. Drake Maye at the half in last night's AFC Championship game, he had 41 passing yards. And in Elizabethan short Gematria, Bellarmine equals 41. Now, Marduk is an extremely important figure in this ritual as well, who was an ancient Babylonian entity, who was regarded to as Bel, like Bellarmine. Marduk is also referred to as Bel. And what's important about Marduk is that he is associated with dragons. And this connects to the constellation of Draco. Again, we're talking about Drake Maye here. Marduk is conflated with dragons, which represents the star system of Draco. And Drake Maye literally has the name phonetically similar to Draco. That male duck hand symbol, the one the Jesuits throw up that looks like this, can also represent the hand of a reptile, and Draco, as associated with the dragon, is also commonly associated with reptilians in general. And that's also where this hand symbol that the Jesuit order likes to use is extremely significant. Again, shout out to Rambo for the knowledge on that. Bellarmine has gematria of 91 and 62. Bell has gematria of 19 and 62. 19, the reflection of 91. These would be in the regular English gematria ciphers. I know we started off with some more exotic ciphers to start the decode, but English gematria is the most common form of gematria you're going to see. There are 4 different English gematria ciphers. The way gematria works is that you add up each letter in a word or a phrase based off of the sequence of that letter in the specific cipher that you are observing. So the first one, English ordinal, is literally just the alphabet straightforward. A is 1 through Z is 26. So if I were to write ABC, it literally equals 6 because A is the first letter, B is the second, C is the third. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. The next cipher is English reduction, which is the same order of the alphabet. A is the first letter to Z is the 26. But every letter that is double digits gets reduced to single digits. For example, J, which is the 10th letter, has a value of 1 because 1 plus 0 equals 1. Same thing with N. N is the 14th letter. N has a value of 5 in reduction because 14, 1 plus 4 equals 5. So N equals 5 in that cipher. Then there's the third cipher, which is reverse ordinal, which is just English ordinal. But Z is the first letter through A is the 26th letter, and you add them up like that. And then you have reverse reduction, which is the same thing. Z has the value of the first letter, A has the value of the 26th and last letter, and you're using those same rules of numerology as I described in this cipher. Bellarmine has gematria of 46 and 91. Marduk has gematria of 64 and 19, the true reflective values. Draco is a match in 4 ciphers across English and Elizabethan gematria to the phrase Marduk. So not only are they connected through the astrotheological symbology, they are also connected through gematria, which shows how important this code is. St. Patrick's Day is March 17th, and St. Patrick is a very relevant figure in this ritual as well, because Robert Bellarmine's feast date on September 17th falls exactly 6 months after St. Patrick's Day, which is March 17th, which in astrology, these would be 2 dates that are exactly 6 months apart across the zodiacal axis of Pisces and Virgo. March 17th being a date in Pisces, September 17th being a date in Virgo. And this is something that is very, very prevalent in the occult and in these occulted rituals. These dates that are exactly 6 months to the difference, like you have right here, March 17th to September 17th, creates that 180 degrees separation directly across the zodiacal wheel. That's very significant energy that these evil occultists are trying to harness, because in astrology, when you have a sign like Pisces and Virgo and they directly intersect each other on a zodiacal wheel, that is what we call an astrological detriment. And what's so significant about these specific dates is that March 17th is essentially exactly in detriment to September 17th, relative to that 6-month axis, because it's literally to the exact date. Because March 17th would be the day leaving about 4 days left in Pisces, and September 17th would be the day leaving just about 4 days left in Virgo. So it's that exact energetic point in each zodiacal sign. So Pisces and Virgo are in detriment to each other. But in essence, you could say that the date March 17th is directly in detriment to the date September 17th and vice versa based off of that zodiacal energy. And so that's why these 2 periods of time are so energetically significant. And one example of how this significant astrological connection manifests is the NFL star player Patrick Mahomes is born on September 17th, which is the feast date of Robert Bellarmine and also the foundation date of the NFL. Think about his name, Patrick, like Saint Patrick, which is celebrated on March 17th, which shows the validity to the fact that these dark occultists put a lot of emphasis on the fact that March 17th and September 17th are exactly 6 months apart. And 9/17 obviously being the significant foundation date of the NFL. And some of the biggest NFL stars at the quarterback position have the name Patrick as well, like Tom Brady, who has the middle name Patrick, and Josh Allen, who has the middle name Patrick. And also notice how Josh Allen was born May 21st, which is Peter Canisius' canonization date, which is another significant synchronicity. Now, St. Patrick has a bell. Like, think of Marduk. Marduk is referred to as Bell. Think of Robert Bellarmine. St. Patrick has his own bell, referred to most commonly as the bell of the Testament. Patrick's bell in Gematria synchronizes with Robert Bellarmine. 196.79 and 169, which is an anagram of 196 and 79 in Gematria. Patrick's bell equals 179.62, just like Bellarmine. The bell of the Testament equals 82, just like Saint Robert Bellarmine. The bell of Armagh equals 102.24, just like Saint Anthony of Padua. The bell of the Testament equals 224.80, just like Saint Anthony of Padua. The bell of the Testament also equals 1360 in standard gematria, and 0, of course, has no value in numerology, so that would be the number 136, just like the date 13th of June, which is the feast date of St. Anthony of Padua. Draco equals 158, which is St. Anthony of Padua's birthday, 15th of August. Clog Fadruig, another name for St. Patrick's bell, equals 203.116, just like Marduk equals 23 and 116. Across various English and Elizabethan ciphers. Now, St. Patrick's bell is also known as the Bell of the Will. Bell of the Will has gematria of 210, and in the first half of the Patriots-Bronco AFC Championship game, Drake Maye ran in for the Patriots' only touchdown of the game, leaving 2:10 on the clock in the first half of this AFC Championship game. Just like the Bell of the Will, 2:10. Bell of the Will also equals 60.192, just like Peter Canisius equals 60.192. Bell of the Will equals 289 in the all-important K cipher. St. Anthony of Padua equals 289 in reverse English ordinal. And what's significant here is St. Patrick's Day, which falls on March 17th, leaves 289 days left in every calendar year. Peter Canisius in Elizabethan reverse gematria equals 173, like that date, 17th March. The Patriots, after winning this game, are 17-3 on the season, like that date, 17th of March. Cortland Sutton, who caught the lone touchdown for the Denver Broncos on the losing team, had 3 catches for 17 yards, March 17th, all occulted references to St. Patrick's Day. The Code of Hammurabi is the most ancient and well-preserved Babylonian legal text, which historically showed the early formations of the law. And what's relevant is that Marduk was elevated to a patron chief deity of Babylon around the time of the same king who actually instituted the law in Babylon. And what's significant about that is this player's name is Cortland Sutton. Where do you practice the law? In the court. He had 3 catches for 17 yards, like the date March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick had the bell, known as the Bell of the Testament, and the entity Marduk is known as Bell. So the bell leads to the court. The Patriots to Broncos score was 10-7. The Bell of the Testament equals 107, just like the score 10-7. In this game, Maye threw for 86 passing yards, quite a measly amount for an AFC Championship game, but it's because the Gematria of Draco and Marduk in the Elizabethan reverse cipher both equal 86. That's why he threw for 86 yards. And St. Patrick was known for banishing snakes during a 40-day fast. That 40-day fast is very relevant because in reverse reduction, Marduk equals 40. But that banishment of snakes is very relevant because what this is an occulted reference to is the Kundalini energy, which is especially prevalent in primordial souls who are indigenous people, who are the original souls reincarnated. They are born with an energy inside of them known as the Kundalini energy. And what this energy is actually the creative source of the universe itself. And what St. Patrick's motif of the banishment of snakes is actually a reference to is attacking the Kundalini energy, which is actually the energy that makes otherwise human beings access the levels of consciousness and ability to that of a god or a goddess, if you're a woman. And this is what the elites are seeking to attack, especially if you are a woman. St. Patrick rituals are very prevalent in rituals that involve targeting women who are of this divine essence, especially women who have been sexually attacked, raped, or traumatized. The St. Patrick Code is being instituted by these elite secret societies who are targeting these women from birth and trying to recreate these horrible experiences, especially sexually, which is the most prevalent way that the elites attack this Kundalini energy, is because it is innately a sexual energy, because it is the creative force of the universe itself, which is expressed sexually. But that is why this world is full of so much perversion, because they are bastardizing what that energy is supposed to represent. That's why you get perversion. And underneath the perversion and all the repression around sexuality, you have rapists, pedophiles, molesters, perverts, homosexuals, pushing all types of garbage onto what is otherwise purity. And that is the elite agenda that is synchronized with the St. Patrick Code, which is why it's so relevant, so significant. You're going to hear me talking about it a lot in the future, especially pertaining to these specific targeted individual programs, mainly directed at women, but not exclusively to either. They do this to the men as well, who are of sacred source. I myself am a sexual trauma victim, and so this is not something that's foreign to the divine masculine either. This is the attack on the divine souls of the universe. And that brings me to the prior point that I made about these doctors of the church, because it's all very relevant to this. One of the most prevalent medical symbols is this symbol right here. It's known as the rod of Asclepius, which shows a pole, which is representing the spine, the human spine, but it's showing only one snake going up the spine. And as you can see in this Kundalini graphic, 2 snakes are supposed to be going up the spine, and these represent a masculine serpent and a feminine serpent, which is the union of the 2 sacred polarities that God is the expression of, the masculine and the feminine. What this is showing right here is the bastardization of that, and what it's actually showing is The elimination of the feminine serpent is what this symbol here represents. And the medical industry is actually where you're going to see this symbol the most. And these Jesuit doctors of the church are extremely prevalent in these Kundalini based rituals. And again, if you're a targeted individual, these sexual related attacks, these Jesuit saints are practicing sorcery that is directed to attack this specific energy. And this symbol is one way that they are trying to tell you that karmically, to try to get to, in their minds, put it in plain sight what they're doing to you. Which is one thing that these elites do, which is a satanic principle. But yeah, if you're a targeted individual, especially if you're a woman, you've probably had spells done on you by these specific church doctor rituals. And if you've had problems at the doctor, yeah, that's also not a coincidence. It comes back to these church doctors. None of this is separate, and unfortunately, everywhere you go in this matrix, in this world, you won't find yourself separate from this sorcery, because it is everywhere. It is the foundation of the matrix, and people have to be educated on that. The rod of Asclepius in Gematria is a supermatch with Robert Bellarmine. Triple synchronicity. Rod of Asclepius also has Gematria of 215, like the date 21st of May, which is the canonization date of St. Peter Canisius, the doctor of the church. In the wild card AFC round, the Patriots defeated the Chargers in a game where Drake Maye threw 268 yards. St. Patrick's Bell equals 268, which is relevant again to that Bell, Marduk, Bellarmine code. The final score was 16-3. Rod of Asclepius equals 163, like the score, 16-3. It's funny how the Chargers fell to 11-7 as they lost this game. And like I was telling you about targeted individuals and these specific kinds of attacks, 117 is a very divine number. Chosen ones equals 117. The dog star equals 117, which is where the chosen souls originate from. The Great Pyramid of Giza also equals 117. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built at an 11-7 ratio. 117 is also a number of the goddess Isis. The dog star is Sirius, and Sirius is the star of the goddess Isis. All very relevant. So now that takes me to the Bohemian Grove. St. John of Nepomuk, the initial Drake Maye that we talked about at the start of this decode, is the patron saint of the Bohemian Grove. Again, Drake Maye, Drake means male duck. John of Nepomuk is throwing that hand sign symbol up that can represent the hand of a duck, or a goose, or a reptile. But in this case, it's a drake, it's a male duck. St. John of Nepomuk's feast date is on May 16th. Again, that name, Drake Maye. He's beatified May 31st. And what's extremely important is that there is a play at the Bohemian Grove called St. Patrick at Terra. And the main ritual that is done at the Bohemian Grove is called the cremation of care, which is very similar to St. Patrick's banishment of snakes. It's not really separate, because the snake that they're talking about is that feminine serpent, which is the principle of care. The divine feminine energy is care. The cremation of care is destroying the same thing in principle, just under a different name. The mascot of the Bohemian Grove is an owl, and the owl is a symbol of Minerva, which is very relevant to this ritual because the cremation of care involves burning effigies with fire in front of this owl of Minerva. Minerva is Gematria of 82107, just like the bell of the Testament. St. Patrick's Bell. St. Patrick, who's at Terra, at the Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove has Gematria of 217, 64, 198, just like Anthony of Padua in the same three ciphers. The Bohemian Grove, these effigies are burned in fire, which invoke the entity Kothar Wakasis, who is the god of fire, the Ugaritic god of fire. Back during this time of Babylon, very relevant entity, Kothar Wakasis. He represents fire. Kothar Wakasis equals 155, 195, and 311 in 3 Elizabethan ciphers. And in those same 3 ciphers, Rod of Asclepius has the same exact value. Not by accident. Kothar Wakasis equals 198, 54, 64, just like Anthony of Padua, 198, 54, 64. One thing I want to add to this decode, Kothar Wakasis' Roman equivalent is Vulcan, who is actually responsible for the desecration of Venus, who is the goddess of love. Vulcan is an abusive entity. He essentially represents the abusive boyfriend that has been so commonly impressed onto the collective consciousness, and Venus represents the principle of the divine feminine. In Rome, Vulcan is Venus's consort because in Rome they are desecrating the sacred feminine, so they wanted to pair the sacred feminine with a bastard. And that bastard is Vulcan, or Kothar Wakasis. And what's important about that connection is Anthony of Padua was born Fernando Martins de Bulhos. Now, what's relevant here is that the zodiacal sign of Taurus is ruled by Venus, which is the goddess of love, and the sign of Venus is the bull. Venus is the bull. His birth name was Fernando Martins de Bulhos. Think about that name. Bull, like Taurus, which is Venus, the goddess of love, and hose. So you're trying to call the goddess a hoe, which just means you're a fucking hoe. Because in order to call a goddess a hoe, you would have to definitively be a chode. That's how it works, which is why another one of his names is Anthony of Lisbon, kind of like lesbian. Not a coincidence. But that's all that I had to show you here today. I know I've been shitposting a lot on this channel. You guys probably wonder why the fuck I'm uploading a bunch of random NFL clips and showing a lot of sexually perverse shit in the NFL as well. Motherfuckers probably think it's a little weird, but let this decode be proof that there's more than meets the eye. There's a much deeper esoteric underpinning as to why these motherfuckers are actually getting gay. And it's actually symbolic of the spiritual attack on earth to try and destroy the divine people who are incarnated here to destroy this bullshit. The main method of attack from these secret societies is these sexually perverse attacks and these abusive relationships that manifest thereafter, which is all orchestrated. It's a conspiracy, and it is the greatest evil that is going on earth right now. And these saints that you see in this video are at the heart of that conspiracy. And the entire Jesuit order knows it, which is why they're upset that I'm making this video, which is exactly why I made this video. But with that being said, signing the fuck out. Thanks for watching.